Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Refill with Randy. I'm here with Toby, and if you would pick up your favorite cup, fill it up, and let's start this day right together. Well, good morning. This is my buddy Toby. He's one of three of the dogs that my friends Jason and Jessica have. You met Lily yesterday. He's getting to be an old boy, but great dogs. Since I get to enjoy my three cats when I'm at home, I get to enjoy the three dogs here, and it's the best of both worlds. Well, speaking of home, I'm actually, again, filming here at my friends Jason and Jessica down in Chautauqua County. And the reason why I'm here is because I had spoken at Heritage Village, which is a free Methodist nursing home. It's one that I am very familiar with. My great-grandfather lived there till he was 103, and I visited him and my great-grandmother often. My father and mother both worked there at different points. My father actually went, and he was there his final year of his life and was treated fantastic. And my grandmother, who I was so close with, she used to teach ceramics, and I would often go with her up on the hill with those who lived on their own. And it's just been a part of my life. And I love the people there. And so I had a chance to go and speak there, thanks to their chaplain, Lowry, Petrie. And it was really good because there were people I didn't know, but there were some people that I did know. And just an exciting thing to see someone who knew 25, 30 years ago and be able to let them experience and hear what's going on in your life now and what God's doing. I also got to see Pastor Bill Lowry Sr. Yesterday, when we were talking about soul companioning, Pastor Bill, he was certainly someone who was a mentor to me. When I first started out in ministry down in Warsaw, whether I asked him to or not. But you know what? He has just become such a great part of my life and has throughout the years. And I know, again, like everyone I talked about yesterday, he always has the best in mind for me. And he has helped me in many ways, from early on in my walk, right up until my current ministry. So I'm grateful for him. Well, that's one end of my trip here. The other end is tomorrow I'm actually going to preach at the Gerry Methodist Church, which is the church where I started going when I was a teenager, back when my grandparents moved to Gerry, and I spent so much time with them, and they didn't have a car, so we would do whatever was local, and I became part of a group there. In fact, when I first started, it was junior high, and I was in a junior high Sunday school class. It was me and 12 other girls. I don't think I ever missed a Sunday. And it was our teacher, Betty Cannon, who invited us for a party up on the hill, up at Heritage Village, at the end of our season before breaking for summer. And that was when I first experienced Christian rock, as she was blasting Striper. Good memories. Well, it's going to be neat going back to Gerry. I have not preached there in the church since about 1994. When I was very first starting out, David Carden was pastor at the time. I was a local ministerial candidate. The title of my sermon was, "Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music?" It is a very traditional church. There are many Free Methodist pastors, retired, their spouses, missionaries and spouses, and so forth. And so I felt like I was cutting edge at the time. Now I'm just thankful that even though it took 25 years, I get to go back and speak again. But you know, there are those times of homecoming that sometimes are bittersweet, right? I mean, Jesus, he didn't have the best homecoming. Remember when he tried to go home and they tried to run him off a cliff? And he says a prophet is never welcomed back in their own town. Now, thankfully, I can say that's not been my experience. When I first came to Christ, when I first started following my call to ministry, I know that there were different ones that I had been friends with, or maybe even just more peripheral friends in high school that questioned whether or not I was sincere. But I hope now, again, after 25 plus years, that the proof is in the pudding. Many of them I've had great conversations with since and been able to just share about how Christ has affected my life and the changes that have been made. And I'm certainly not perfect, and I certainly was not perfect then. And there's probably a list of people that I should try to locate and apologize for some dumb thing that I did way back when, but I'm not going to live in the past. I'm going to live now in the present, looking to the future, and just be grateful for the opportunities that God has given me. You know, when I first came to the Lord, I had made a declaration, if you would, when I was in that youth group in Gerry with Todd Danningberg. And it's not that I wasn't sincere with it, but I really didn't know what it meant. I really didn't know what being a Christian was all about. And unfortunately, I don't think a lot of my peers did as well, because we were all pretty good at being Christians on Wednesday night and Sunday morning, but then lived like the rest of the world all the other times. But there came a time when my grandmother, she had passed away suddenly. I had gone to help take care of my grandfather and was living with him there in Gerry, and so I was going to the church, and there was just something that was drawing me closer to him. Now, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt where my grandmother was. She was, at that point, really the only solid Christian in our family. And she was a prayer warrior. And I would often hear her pray for me. And sometimes the things she would pray, it would break my heart because she'd be in tears. And I think, how can I put my grandmother through that? Other times she would be praying, and she would pray specifically that God would call me to be a pastor. Of course, the irony is, it was her death that was really that catalyst that drew me to become a Christian. Well, I knew that I wanted to become a Christian. I knew I wanted to know what it really meant. And I knew that it probably wasn't going to happen if I stayed in the same place with the same people doing the same things. And so right after I graduated, I got on a bus, and after a few different changeovers, 36 hours later, I was in McPherson, Kansas, starting my first year at Central College. Now, this was all brand new to me, but right off the bat, when the then president at the time, John Martin, started talking in chapel about, not going through the motions, but really learning what it was like to be a Christian, I knew I'd made the right choice. I was seeking hard after God. I often joke with people that it's easy to find him in Kansas. There's nothing else there. But the fact is, there was just a spiritual awakening on our campus that year. I initially was going to the Free Methodist Church with our former bishop, David Kendall, but then I really got involved with a young man. He was a fifth-year senior named Jamie Lilly. His now wife, Verna, was my small group leader, and they kind of discipled me and really took me in, along with some of my friends, Tom Rivers and so forth. We became part of their church, which was the First Assemblies of God, Pastor David Case. And it was just an amazing, amazing time of growth, of learning scripture, of learning how to pray, of learning what it meant to actually be a Christian. And that year there, it gave me the rooting that I needed to be able to come back home. I transferred back to Roberts Wesleyan College, and rather than, being pulled out the first time something bad happened, like with the seed that, fell on that shallow soil, or just following whatever wind of teaching I heard, I went back rooted and grounded in my faith, having received my call, and God was able to do some amazing things in my life. Being home, it just reminds me of how it started. Nobody is born a pastor. Nobody is born an evangelist. Nobody is born, CEO of Microsoft. Nobody is born the best guitar player. No one is born, with the best singing voice. There's always a start. And so whatever God has started in you, even if it was years ago and you didn't follow it at the time, you'd be amazed how many people have told me that, I was called to do this or I was called to do that, but I'm finally going to do it, and it's 30 years later, which is fine. Better now than never. If God is still calling you, that means he's still willing to equip you to do whatever it is he wants of you. But think back to what is that starting spot for you, and maybe even take some time to thank those who were a part of those initial steps, those that helped you on your way. Today, I just want to thank, again, a list which is way too long to try to put out here, but just some key people that really spoke into my life at the time. Ray McGinnis was my pastor in high school, and he was a great preacher, and I really appreciated him. Actually, even before that, Pastor Jim Bailey. He was at Park United Methodist. That's where my grandparents went when they lived in Sinclairville. And he was the first pastoral visit I ever got when I signed up as a kid, and he showed up on his motorcycle at my house, and it was fantastic. Todd Danningberg, he really showed me what it was like to be a Christian and to care about the youth in a way that I just hadn't experienced myself to that time. There were others that came beside and showed that same kind of love. Paul Cooley and Morton Armstrong and David Dottie Miller, several others. There were pastors who were retired living at Heritage Village that at the time, we as teenagers, we would fill up the first few rows in the church, and they would come through every Sunday morning. They would tell us how much they were thankful that we had come that day. We were so welcome, and that they loved us. And let me tell you, when you're a teenager, and especially if you're having difficulty at home, I had some father wounds that I'll talk about another time. To have someone welcome you and tell you they love you is just amazing. Better than whatever style of music better sometimes than whatever is being preached about. You know, that love that's shown. Central, you know, my friend Tom Rivers, Jamie and Vernal Lilly, Pastor David Case, so many saints. And so I just want to say thank you to them. And I want to encourage you, if you're already living out your call, take some time to go back and thank those that helped you start. And if you don't know what your call is, or maybe you know what it is, but you've never had the courage to follow it, stop even today and just pray and ask the Lord if that call is still on your life. And if it is, don't wait another day. God, He will give you whatever you need if you follow Him. And so today, I pray that you go knowing what God's will is for your life, wanting to be obedient to that, and willing to encourage others along the way. Have a great day.